Chapter 331. Take her away to me. As long as this woman is in my hands, I believe that David will throw himself into the net. Zhong Wenji instructed his subordinates to take Jia Yao into the car, and then the two cars swaggered away from Sonia and the others. Yu Yao. Elder sister. Looking at the passing car, He Zigang and Ji Yufei all shouted desperately. Sonia stood on the spot, as if she was stupid. I don't know how long it took. Sonia's cell phone rang. It was David. At that time on the mountain, David's mobile phone had no signal at all. On the way to Yanchang, David received several messages on his mobile phone, showing that Sonia had called him several times. He was afraid that Sonia would be worried, so David called back and forth. Sister Sonia, your phone is ringing. Ji Yufei pushed Sonia carefully. Only then did Sonia react. She picked up the phone and saw that David was calling. Her eyes were red, and she immediately burst into tears. David, where are you? Where are you? Sister Yu Yao was taken away. Lin Tianyu was injured and bleeding a lot. As soon as the phone was connected, Sonia cried and followed David. Boom. After David, who was driving, heard this, he was stunned for a moment, and then a monstrous killing intent erupted from his body, and his face became colder and colder. Wait for me, I'll be there soon. David only said one sentence and hung up the phone. He knew that it would be futile to ask more questions at this time, and everything had to wait for him to go back. David drove the car to the limit and rushed towards Yanchang. At this time, Sonia and He Zigang and the others looked at Lin Tianyu, who was dying with blood on the ground, and seemed a little helpless. Let's call and take him to the hospital, or he'll die. Ji Yufei looked at Lin Tianyu's tragic appearance and whispered in fright. I'll call the ambulance right now. He Zigang nodded, ready to call 120. No need. Lin Tianyu raised his hand weakly, stopped He Zigang, and then said with difficulty, Mr. Chen, come back soon and let him heal me. Although Lin Tianyu was seriously injured, his mind was still very clear. He knew that if he was sent to the hospital, he would definitely be disemboweled, and then his bones would be pierced to draw blood, which would hurt his vitality. Those who practice martial arts are the most taboo to use a knife on his body. If David comes back, there will definitely be a way to save him. And without having to disembowel. Does Brother Chen still have medical skills? Ji Yufei asked with surprise. He will. My dad was in danger at the time, and it was David who rescued my dad, and we also met at that time. Sonia explained to Ji Yufei. Is this too perfect? Ji Yufei felt incredible. She never thought that such a perfect man could exist in the world. He has a lot of money, can fight, and knows medical skills. The problem is that he is handsome and dedicated. Such a good man, I am afraid that he will not be able to find him with a lantern, but he is met by Sonia. At this time, Ji Yufei is right, Sonia is even more envious. Since Lin Tianyu didn't go to the hospital, He Zigang asked a few people to help him, carried Lin Tianyu to the hotel, and waited for David to come back. About half an hour later, a rush of brakes sounded in front of the hotel, and then David flew into the hotel. Brother David, you are back. Seeing David coming back, He Zigang hurriedly greeted him. Where's Sonia? David asked anxiously. Sonia is fine, she and Yufei are in the room. Look at Lin Tianyu quickly, it is estimated that you will die a little later. He Zigang took David and hurriedly walked towards Lin Tianyu's room. Chapter 332. As soon as he walked into the room, David saw Lin Tianyu on the bed. His face was pale, his chest was sunken, and his body was covered in blood. Hearing the voice, Lin Tianyu opened his eyes slightly and saw that David was back. Lin Tianyu tried his best to sit up, but his body couldn't move at all. Don't move, I'll show you. David stepped forward, one hand pressed on Lin Tianyu's shoulder, and the other hand gently swept across Lin Tianyu's chest. At this time, David's face was cold and terrifying. Mr. Chen, your subordinates are incompetent, make Miss Su startled. Lin Tianyu said with a look of shame. Okay, stop talking, the other party is a master, you are not their opponent. David can judge the strength of the other party through the injury. Although Lin Tianyu's injury seems to be in his eyes, it is not fatal, but it is not so easy to recover. It is obvious that the other party does not want to kill Lin Tianyu, but he does not want to make Lin Tianyu feel too good. As David's palm swept across Lin Tianyu's chest, a stream of spiritual power was sent into Lin Tianyu's body. Lin Tianyu felt as if his whole body was soaked in warm hot water. It was very comfortable, and he didn't feel any pain at all. Lin Tianyu's broken rib, which was also wrapped in spiritual power at this time, grew and healed rapidly. Lin Tianyu's sunken chest slowly recovered as before. After a while, David stopped his hands, and there was a faint sweat stain on his forehead. This kind of broken bone regeneration requires a huge amount of spiritual power. If David hadn't eaten the gathering pill, his strength had broken through to the 9th level of Qi training. There was absolutely no way for Lin Tianyu to heal. Okay, get up. After David put his hand away, he let out a heavy sigh and sat on the chair next to him, looking a little weak. Lin Tianyu was very impressed with what David said, and immediately turned over and stood up from the bed, and then was pleasantly surprised to find that his body was really fine, but there were still some injuries on his body, and blood was constantly flowing out, but these skin injuries, for Lin Tianyu, nothing at all. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Lin Tianyu looked at David gratefully. Your body still needs to be recuperated, so don't use force for the time being. When I refine a medicinal pill for you, your body will be fine. David warned Lin Tianyu. Got it. Lin Tianyu nodded. At this time, He Zhigong's mouth was wide open, and he was able to swallow an egg. How could such a serious injury be healed in an instant? What kind of magic is this impossible? Is this David an immortal? He Zhigong's mind was thinking wildly, but David didn't have time to pay attention to him, but asked Lin Tianyu, what's going on, tell me clearly. Lin Tianyu told David the matter one by one. When David knew that he was still sent by the Wei family, he clenched his fist suddenly, and his anger grew even more. David, are you back? At this moment, Sonia and Ji Yufei heard the movement and walked over from the room. Seeing Sonia's pale face, David felt distressed for a while, and hurriedly stepped forward and put his arms around Sonia's shoulders and said, I'm sorry, it's all my fault, which frightened you, and I said I would never let you hurt again. Protect you forever, but I. Sonia hurriedly stretched out her hand to cover David's mouth. I'm fine, you don't have to blame yourself, I'm really fine, it's just Sister Yu Yao. I see, Lin Tianyu has already told me that I will definitely save her. David grabbed Sonia's hand and said firmly. But are you in danger? Sonia was very contradictory at this time. She wanted David to rescue Ji Yu Yao, but she was afraid that David would be in danger. Chapter 333. Don't worry, the person who can kill me hasn't been born yet. David smiled slightly at Sonia, then looked at Lin Tianyu and said, bring more brothers from Juitong, don't make a mistake. Understood. Lin Tianyu nodded, and then went to call. After David comforted Sonia a few words, he left the hotel and prepared to go to the provincial capital to rescue Ji Yu Yao. After walking out of the hotel, the smile on David's face disappeared instantly, replaced by an endless chill. All the pedestrians passing by on the road suddenly felt the air instantly cold, and they couldn't help shivering. The provincial capital, Wei family. Looking at the woman Zhong Wenji brought back, Wei Tao was a little dumbfounded. Uncle, you caught the wrong one. I don't know this woman, she's not Sonia at all. Wei Tao said helplessly. Wrong arrest. Zhong Wenji was stunned for a moment, and a little confused. She said her name is Sonia Su, how could she be wrong? Zhong Wenji said, looked at Ji Yu Yufei and said, tell me, what's your name? Ji Yu Yufei's body trembled slightly. She had heard of the Wei family for a long time, but this was the first time she came to the Wei family. Looking at the splendid mansion of the Wei family, and the bodyguards constantly moving in the courtyard, Ji Yu Yufei was scared. My name is Ji Yu Yufei. Ji Yu Yufenuo said. Damn, how dare you lie to me? Zhong Wenji was furious and gave Ji Yu Yufei a slap in the face, causing the corner of Ji Yu Yufei's mouth to bleed. This Zhong Wenji doesn't even have a little pity and cherish Jade. What do I do now? I'll send her back, and then I'll recapture that Sonia. Zhong Wenji looked at Wei Tao and asked. Uncle, since you've caught it, don't send it back. I've been at home for the past few days, and I've been suffocated for a long time. Just let this woman accompany me. Wei Tao looked at the beautiful Ji Yu Yufei with a lustful light flashing in his eyes. Xiao Tao, I can tell you that you are injured, don't make a fool of yourself, and pay attention to your body. If your mother finds out, you must scold me. Zhong Wenji preached to Wei Tao with a serious look on his face. Don't worry, uncle, can't we just tell my mother? I have my own limits, don't worry about it. Wei Tao looked at Ji Yu Yufei. He didn't care whether he was injured or not, he couldn't go out to play these few days, he had already lost his mind. Pay more attention to yourself, then I'll go back, call me if you have anything, and I'll go to Yanchang again tomorrow. Zhong Wenji said, walked out of the room, and closed the door. Wei Tao looked at Ji Yu Yufei with a wicked smile. Little beauty, don't be afraid, come and sit next to me, you just need to be obedient, and I will send you back tomorrow. If you dare not listen to me, I will call you directly. Those servants outside put you to sleep, they are not as gentle as me. Ji Yu Yufei was already terrified to death at this time. Hearing Wei Tao say this, how dare she have the slightest idea of resistance? This is in Wei's house, and she has no chance of escaping. The only thing she can do now is to obey Wei Tao's words. With tears in her eyes, Ji Yufei walked toward Wei Tao little by little, and then sat beside Wei Tao. Smelling the fragrance of Ji Yufei's body, Wei Tao laughed happily when he saw Ji Yufei's pitiful appearance. This is the first time since he was injured that he laughed so happily. In the yard of the Wei family, the lights were already bright, and all the bodyguards of the Wei family were patrolling continuously. Several experts brought by Zhong Wenji were also left behind by Wei Kunan. I don't know why, Wei Kunan is always restless. Ever since Uncle Fu was killed last night and David said he was going to turn his head off, Wei Kunan began to feel a little scared. He was always afraid that if he didn't pay attention, David would really kill the Wei family and twist his head off. Chapter 334. Master, everyone has been arranged. There is no dead corner in the whole villa. Even a fly can't fly in. In addition, several masters of the Zhong family have also arranged. Master, don't worry. The housekeeper walked into the villa and said to Wei Kunan. Okay, I get it. Wei Kunan waved his hand while sitting on the sofa. The housekeeper obediently backed out, while Zhong Lanfeng put on a mask and walked downstairs. Look at how cowardly you are. How could you be frightened into such a virtue by a hairy boy? I think the older you are, the more timid you are. Zhong Lanfeng reprimanded Wei Kunan in dissatisfaction. Wei Kunan frowned, glanced at Zhong Lanfeng, did not dare to speak. But he himself knew that the person who could kill Uncle Fu in one move could be an ordinary person. Uncle Fu was brought back last night, and after the servant told him about the situation at the time, Wei Kun was worried. If David was just an ordinary boy, why would Lin Tianyu, Ji Wenshan, and even Ling Zhenchuan treat him so politely? And how could Reuben, the richest man in Horrendal, let his daughter associate with an ordinary person? So the more Wei Kunan thought about it, the more wrong it became, so he ordered people to strengthen their guard. Seeing that Wei Kunan didn't speak, Zhong Lanfeng snorted coldly, I'll go see my son and let him eat more food and increase his nutrition. Zhong Lanfeng said, and walked towards Wei Tao's own villa. At this time, in Wei Tao's room, Ji Yufei was lying on the bed without saying a word. Tears had already wet the quilt on the bed, but she didn't dare to say a word. Wei Tao looked at Ji Yufei excitedly, and slowly unbuttoned Ji Yufei's clothes with both hands. When Ji Yufei's fair skin was exposed, Wei Tao's eyes turned red. Sure enough. Wei Tao licked his lips, and the hala almost didn't come out. Wei Tao, who couldn't wait, threw his head on Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei bit her lip and turned her head to the side. Tears were pouring out like a river estuary bursting. Bang. At this moment, Wei Tao's room door was pushed open. Wei Tao was startled, his face turned cold and said, paralyzed, whoever enters the door doesn't know how to knock on the door, is it courting death? Wei Tao had just finished scolding, when he turned his head and saw that it was his mother who walked in. His face changed with fright, and he hurriedly got up from Ji Yufei's body. Mom, why are you here? Wei Tao said with an embarrassed expression. Zhong Lanfeng looked at Ji Yufei on the bed, and then at Wei Tao, with a look of anger, you little ba five-tard, don't you want to live? You are injured now, how did the doctor tell you? You dare to do this? Kind of thing. Mom, I don't look good on my legs. Besides, I'm just. Shut up for me, you've learned to talk back, haven't you? Zhong Lanfeng glared, so frightened that Wei Tao didn't dare to speak. Zhong Lanfeng looked at Ji Yufei on the bed again, and said coldly, don't get out of here yet, look at your virtue, how can you look like a lady, and I don't know what my family Xiao Tao likes about you. Zhong Lanfeng took Ji Yufei as Sonia, she didn't even know that Zhong Wenji was wrong. If Ji Yufei was granted amnesty, she hurriedly got up, grabbed her collar and ran out, but she didn't think about escaping, because she knew that in a compound like the Wei family, a girl of her would not be able to escape at all. After Zhong Lanfeng scolded Wei Tao fiercely in the room, she walked out of the room and glanced at Ji Yufei, and then waved her hands and called the two servants, take care of her, don't let the young master approach her, you know. I know ma'am. The two servants hurriedly nodded, they knew Zhong Lanfeng's cruelty, and no one dared to offend. Chapter 335. Ji Yufei was locked in a room on the side. Zhong Lanfeng muttered, this ba five-tard, just like his father, goes crazy when he sees a woman. Zhong Lanfeng had just finished speaking when he suddenly heard a loud noise. It was loud, like a crash. Zhong Lanfeng hurriedly looked for the reputation, and found that the tall copper door of the villa was slammed open by a car, and the two copper doors fell to the ground with a bang, causing a burst of dust. All the bodyguards of the Wei family heard the sound and hurried towards the door, and then stopped the car that hit the door. The car door opened, and David walked out of the car full of murderous intent. Facing dozens of Wei family bodyguards, David's face did not show the slightest movement. Who are you? Zhong Lanfeng had already arrived at this time, frowning slightly and asked. Today, everyone in this yard will die. David said coldly, his voice was like that of a secluded H3LL, making people shudder after hearing it. You are that David? Zhong Lanfeng asked with a full face. He is David, kill him for me. Hearing the movement, Wei Kunan also rushed over. When he saw David, he immediately panicked and shouted loudly. The Wei family bodyguards were ordered to rush towards David together. David's eyes narrowed slightly, his body exuded bloodthirsty murderous aura, and he slowly took down a steel pipe from above. Die. As soon as the word, dead, came out, David's figure disappeared in the same place, and then he saw an afterimage, shuttled among the Wei family bodyguards. David, who has reached the 9th level of Qi training, how could these ordinary bodyguards be David's opponents? Bang bang bang. With a dull sound of hitting, Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng only saw a splash of blood splashing, and then they looked at the bodyguards of the Wei family who were already lying on the ground. Each bodyguard was hit on the head by a hard object, and then got a headshot. And died. In just a few minutes, not a single bodyguard was alive, and a thick bloody aura hung over the Wei family villa. On the steel pipe in David's hand, the blood is still falling. Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng were dumbfounded, their eyes were full of horror, looking at David's scarlet eyes, they were both scared. Today, you are all going to die. David walked towards Wei Kunan and his wife step by step. Boy, don't be arrogant. Suddenly, 2 middle-aged men in training suits rushed towards David and punched at the same time. There are 2 people who are guarding Zhong Lanfeng's side. These 4 people are the masters left by the Zhong family. Seeing this, David threw away the steel pipe in his hand, and at the same time threw out his fists and went up to meet him directly. Bang! 4 fists collided, and the sound of exploding thunder broke out. David's face turned cold, his arms were slightly numb, and the 2 masters of the Zhong family flew out, their bodies suddenly burst in midair, blood and internal organs scattered all over the place, extremely cruel and bloody. David's shot was the ultimate move, and he didn't hold back at all, but when the 2 shot at the same time, they could actually make their arms go numb, which was considered a real master. Seeing this situation, Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng were both stupid. They knew the strength of the Zhong family's masters, but now they were beaten by David. The faces of the remaining 2 Zhong family masters became ugly, but they still gritted their teeth and said to Zhong Lanfeng, Miss, you take the uncle and go, we will hold him. Zhong Lanfeng nodded, and her body was slowly backing away. Before she saw David, she scolded Wei Kunan for being a waste, but now she began to regret it. Knowing that David was so powerful, she asked the Zhong family to send more people. Coming. Want to go? I said you were all going to die. After David finished speaking, the whole person suddenly turned into an afterimage, rushing towards Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng. Chapter 336. Stop him. Zhong Lanfeng ordered loudly. The 2 Zhong family masters jumped up, and although they knew they were defeated, they tried their best to stop David. David stretched out his hand and clasped the wrists of the 2 people directly. Immediately after the concentration art was activated, a huge vortex formed in the Dantian. The 2 Zhong family masters suddenly felt the power of their bodies was rapidly draining. The 2 Zhong family masters were shocked and wanted to break free from David's shackles, but found that they couldn't break free at all. In just 10 seconds, the 2 Zhong family masters instantly turned into mummified corpses, their eyes widened, and they didn't know how they died until they died. What's the matter? Wei Kunan was shocked. Ghost, you're a ghost, you're not a human, you're not a human. Looking at the 2 mummified Zhong family masters on the ground, Zhong Lanfeng was going crazy. David looked at Wei Kunan and his wife coldly, without the slightest expression on his face. Where is the girl you caught? David asked. Female. Girl. Zhong Lanfeng looked horrified, then pointed to a villa and said, yes, in the room. Take me. David said coldly. Good, good, good. Zhong Lanfeng said 3 good words in a row, no longer as arrogant and domineering as before. Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng took David tremblingly. At this time, neither of them had any intention of escaping, because they knew that they could not escape at all. Originally, they thought they had some kung fu, so even if they couldn't beat David, they would still be able to make 2 moves, but now seeing the scene just now, Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfeng all gave up the idea of fighting against David. Taking David to the room where Jia Yao was closed, Zhong Lanfeng opened the door. Jia Yao, who had been crying, heard the door slamming, so she raised her head and looked over. When she saw David, her face suddenly became happy, and her heart was instantly filled with hope. David. Jia Yao rushed towards David. Thank you for making you suffer for Sonia. Seeing Ji Yao rushing over, David was full of gratitude. Zhong Lanfang was a little puzzled and didn't know what David meant, but he didn't dare to ask. David, you see that people are here and they are not injured. Today's affairs are over, you just let us go, and you can mention whatever you want. Wei Kunan followed David to beg for mercy with a bitter face. David sneered, do you think I will believe you? Wei Kunan was stunned for a moment, but before he could react, David threw a punch and hit Wei Kunan's head directly, instantly blowing Wei Kunan's head off. With Wei Kunan's strength, he couldn't escape David's punch. The blood was mixed with the brain, and it splashed directly on Zhong Lanfang's face. You. Zhong Lanfang looked at David with anger in his eyes, but couldn't say a word. Don't worry, I know you women like beauty, I won't blow your head off, I'll let you die beautifully. David looked at Zhong Lanfang, who was still wearing a mask, and said. After finishing speaking, David suddenly shot and grabbed Zhong Lanfang's neck. Zhong Lanfang struggled desperately, but to no avail, and was finally strangled to death by David. Looking at the dead Wei Kunan and Zhong Lanfang, David's face did not change in the slightest, but Ji Yao's whole body showed panic, holding David with both hands, and his body was shaking violently. There's one left, and I'll take you home when I'm done. David comforted Ji Yao and walked into the next room. At this time, Wei Tao was wearing headphones in the room and watching the small video. Just now, his anger was brought up, but Zhong Lanfang was disappointed. Now Wei Tao watched the small video and was ready to vent. Chapter 337. David walked into the room, but Wei Tao hadn't found it yet, and was still looking at his phone intently. David stepped forward, snatched the phone from Wei Tao's hand, and slammed it to the ground. Wei Tao was startled by this and jumped up hastily. When he saw that David appeared in his room, he was shocked and instinctively wanted to get out of bed and run away. But as soon as his foot hit the ground, he fell down with a thud, and he forgot that one of his legs was dead. David, how did you get in? Wei Tao said with a look of horror. And David ignored him, his eyes were attracted by a jade pendant on Wei Tao's bed. David stepped forward and slowly picked up the jade pendant. The jade pendant actually contained spiritual energy. David was overjoyed. He didn't expect this trip to have an unexpected joy and get a treasure. Putting the jade pendant in his pocket, David turned his attention to Wei Tao. David, take that jade pendant you like, and the things in my room, take whatever you like, take it and leave quickly. If my father and my mother find out, you won't be able to run away at all. Wei Tao knew that the most important thing at this time was to coax David away first, or else David would attack him, and he would not have the ability to resist at all. Your father, your mother. With a sneer on David's face, he reached out to pick up Wei Tao, and then walked out. Walking to the next room, David threw Wei Tao out. Your parents and your mother are both here. Today, I am very kind and let your family die together. Wei Tao looked at the corpses of his parents, and the whole person was suddenly frightened. David, don't kill me, you can bypass me, I am willing to be your dog in the future, I am willing to give you the entire Wei family, and spare my life. Wei Tao cried bitterly and begged bitterly. Seeing Wei Tao like that, David also lost interest in torturing him. He picked up Wei Tao with one hand, and then slammed the other hand towards Wei Tao. PFFT. David's fist penetrated Wei Tao's body instantly. Wei Tao's eyes widened, and he looked down at his chest in disbelief. David pulled out his arm, Wei Tao's body fell heavily on the ground, and blood flowed out instantly. He simply washed his body and set the whole villa on fire. Finally, David looked at Ji Yao and said, let's go. Ji Yao nodded, but just after taking a step, Ji Yao's body instantly fell towards the front. Seeing such a bloody scene, Ji Yao's legs have already softened, and she can't walk at all. Seeing this, David could only pick up Ji Yao and walk towards the car. Ji Yao clasped David's neck with both hands. Their current relationship, such an intimate gesture, made Ji Yao's heart beat faster and her face turned red, but David did not change. Ji Yao, who was in David's arms, quietly poked her head into David's arms. She felt that she was very safe and comfortable in David's arms. She glanced at David secretly. Ji Yao's face turned even redder. She actually found that her mood was changing. She even hoped that David was not Sonya's boyfriend, but her own boyfriend, and she was just like this boyfriend hugs. David didn't know what Ji Yao was thinking. He put her in the car and rushed back to Yanchang. Ji Yao in the car kept looking at David with admiration in his eyes. Shortly after David left, the Wei family's raging fire started to burn, directly burning the entire Wei family beyond recognition, and the Wei family's fire even more disrupted the entire pattern of the provincial capital, and the provincial capital would meet again soon after. It was a bloody storm. Chapter 338. Yanchang, Sonia stayed up all night. He was worried about David. Lin Tianyu urgently dispatched hundreds of people from Horendal to Yanchang, and directly protected the hotel where Sonia was staying. This scared the hotel owner half to death, thinking he had offended someone. It wasn't until the sun rose slowly that David drove back in the car whose front had been deformed. Sonia's heart was tightly clenched when she saw that the car was about to be scrapped. When David got out of the car, Sonia jumped up. "David, are you okay? Are you not injured?" Sonia asked with concern. "I'm fine. How could a little Wei family hurt me?" David said with a slight smile. At this time, Jia Yao also got out of the car. Seeing Sonia and David hugging each other, Jia Yao's heart suddenly felt sour. "Yao, are you all right?" When He Zigang saw that Jia Yao was rescued, he hurried forward to hug Jia Yao in his arms for comfort. Jia Yao pushed He Zigang, but did not let him hug her, but gave him a cold look and said indifferently, "It's okay." He Zigang was stunned for a moment, wondering why Jia Yao was so indifferent to herself. "Sister Yao, thank you so much, you saved me." Sonia let go of David at this moment, stepped forward to hug Jia Yao, and said gratefully, "Silly girl, I'm your sister, of course I will stand in front of you when there is danger, and it should be my sister, thank you." Jia Yao smiled slightly, and glanced at David unconsciously. Sonia looked at Jia Yao with a puzzled face, not understanding what Jia Yao meant and why she should thank herself. Seeing Sonia's puzzled look, Jia Yao explained, "Sister would like to thank you for finding such an excellent boyfriend, otherwise my sister will not be able to come back." Jia Yao said it in a joking tone, but she had real thoughts in her heart. David's appearance made her finally know what kind of boyfriend she needed. "Sister Yao, don't compliment him so much, it will save him fussing again," Sonia said with a smile. David and Jia Yao were all right, and everyone relaxed, and Sonia's words also made several people laugh. David has been running around continuously for the past 2 days, and he is indeed a little tired. After a few simple words, David went to rest. David and the others fell asleep, but the provincial capital turned into a pot of porridge. A fire in the Wei family instantly made the nerves of many families in the provincial capital tense, and they all waited and watched. The Wei family had a lot of properties in the provincial capital. Now the Wei family is gone, but those industries need someone to take over, so many families are staring at this big piece of fat. Don't look at when Wei Kunan was there, all of them were called brothers and sisters, but now that people are gone, these people will immediately become hungry wolves, ready to divide up the Wei family at any time. At this time, the Wei family villa was surrounded by hundreds of uniformed detectives. Unrelated personnel were not allowed to enter, and even a cordon was arranged within a radius of several kilometers. What is the current situation of the Wei family? No one knows. Knowledge. At this moment, a middle-aged man in plain clothes, with a national character face and frowning furrowed, covered his mouth and nose with a handkerchief, shielding the thick bloody aura. This person is Li Shui, the pavilion master of the provincial capital. The security department of the entire provincial capital is guarded by the pavilion. Now that such a big thing is happening, he, the pavilion owner of the law-protecting pavilion, must be present in person. Pavilion Master, after the inventory, there are a total of 48 corpses, but all the corpses have been burnt, and their identities cannot be identified. Further screening is required. A very capable girl with a ponytail and a uniform walked up to Li Shui and said respectfully. Chapter 339. If David was here and saw this girl, he would definitely feel a little familiar, because this girl is very similar to Ji Yu Wenshin in some ways, and this girl is Ji Yu Linger, the granddaughter of Ji Yu Wenshin. After Ji Yu Wenshin retired from the provincial capital, he returned to Horendal to retire, while his sons and granddaughters were still working in the provincial capital. Don't you have a living? Li Shui said with a frown. No, there is not a single living person, and the surveillance video recorder was also taken away, so there is no video data left. Ji Yu Linger shook his head. Linger, what do you think of this matter? Li Shui continued to ask. This matter is obviously seeking revenge, because a lot of the Wei family's gold and silver jewelry has not been lost, but the murderer's method is very cruel. Many people were killed by headshots. It can be seen that they have a deep hatred with the Wei family. Ji Yu Linger analyzed it carefully. Since this is the case, then investigate all the people who have hatred with the Wei family. Li Shui sighed. Hey, the provincial capital will be in chaos in the future, and our good days will come to an end. The pavilion master, over the Zhong family, we. Ji Yu Linger was about to say something, but she heard a fierce quarrel at the door. Get the H3LL out of there, I'll kill whoever the FCUK stops me. The voice is full of murderousness and anger. With the roar, a group of people rushed in angrily, a group of detectives watched, and no one dared to stop it. The leader was an old man with a gray beard, his eyes were full of anger. Looking at the current scene of the Wei family, his eyes suddenly turned red. And beside the old man followed Zhong Wenji. These people are from the Zhong family, and this old man is Zhong Lanfeng's father, Zhong Zhong. After hearing about the accident in the Wei family, Zhong Zhong immediately brought people over in person. Who is it? Who did it? I want to punish the 9 clans. Zhong Zhong's body trembled slightly, and the roar could be heard clearly even from a few miles away. Old Zhong. Seeing that the Zhong family was here, Li Shui hurriedly greeted him. Li Shui, how is my sister's family? Do you know who did it? After Zhong Wenji saw Li Shui, he immediately questioned him sharply, showing no respect for Li Shui. Although Li Shui was unhappy in his heart, he didn't say anything. He could only say to Zhong Wenji, young Master Zhong, my condolences, the Wei family did not leave a survivor. Hearing what Li Shui said, Zhong was shocked, and his body suddenly fell backwards. Dad, Zhong Wenji hurriedly supported Zhong. Old Zhong, condolences. Li Shui also hurriedly comforted. Zhong's body was trembling, his eyes were tightly closed, and he recovered after a while. I don't care who did it, I must smash his body into 10,000 pieces. Zhong's eyes burst with killing intent, and then he looked at Li Shui and said, Li Pavilion Master, I will handle this matter by myself, and you will take yours with you. People go. Old Zhong, this. Li Shui looked embarrassed. Wenji, see you off. Zhong did not give Li Shui a chance to speak at all. How can you do this? When such a big thing happened, we should have come forward from the Dharma Protector Pavilion. What should you do yourself? Ji Linger couldn't stand it any longer, and asked Zhong 2 steps forward. Zhong frowned, glanced at Ji Linger, and then asked, who is this little girl? Dad, this is Ji Wenshan's granddaughter. Zhong Wenji hurriedly replied. HMPH, even if your grandfather Ji Wenshan is here, ask him if he dares to speak to me with such an attitude. Zhong snorted coldly, his face full of chills. Elder Zhong, the young man is ignorant, and his words are a bit reckless. I hope Mr. Zhong won't be angry. Li Shui hurriedly apologized, and then continued, Elder Zhong, the Wei family's funeral still needs the Zhong family to take care of, and now the entire province there are many families in the city that are eyeing the Wei family. Zhong Lao should devote more energy here. As for catching the murderer, just leave it to our Dharma Protector Pavilion. Chapter 340. After Zhong Wenji heard it, he whispered a few words in Zhong's ear, as if he was saying something. Zhong's eyes narrowed slightly. Whoever dares to attack the Wei family's idea is to go against my Zhong family, but I want to see how dare that family in the provincial capital dare. After finishing speaking, Zhong's body suddenly burst out with surging murderous aura, the clothes on his body are automatically without wind, and all the people around are shaking and shuddering. I'll give you 3 days to bring the murderer to me within 3 days. If you haven't caught the murderer after 3 days, I will solve it in my own way. Zhong said coldly to Li Shui. 3 days. Li Shui's face suddenly showed a look of embarrassment. Pavilion Li, I'll tell you the personal selection. Most of this is done by a guy named David. He is from Horrendal. As for the others, you can check it yourself. After Zhong Wenji got the news of the Wei family accident, he thought of David for the first time. David. Li Shui muttered, then nodded and said, thank you, young Master Zhong, for reminding me, I'll check it out now. Li Shui took people away, and the Zhong family will handle the rest of the Wei family. Linger, isn't Gu resting in Horrendal? You ask Gu, who is this David, who can destroy the Wei family, but he must not be an ordinary person. Why haven't I heard of it? On the way, Li Shui said to Gu Linger. Got it. Gu Linger replied casually, but there was a bit of displeasure on her face. Just being trained by the Zhong family, this made Gu Linger very unhappy. Li Shui glanced at Gu Linger and said nothing, but sighed slightly. In Yanchang, David slept for a whole day and felt that his body had recovered a lot. He immediately called He Zigang and asked him to prepare medicinal materials. David wanted to use the night time to refine a medicinal pill for Lin Tianyu, so that Lin Tianyu could the body recovers as soon as possible. Because they were all relatively common medicinal materials, He Zigang prepared a lot of them. After David refined the medicinal herbs, he let Lin Tianyu take it, and he also taught Lin Tianyu a set of common resolve, so that when Lin Tianyu was fine you can concentrate on body training. Early the next morning, David and the others planned to return to Horrendal. This time they were out for a few days. I was afraid that Reuben would be worried at home. Running around together like this, there will inevitably be some gossip. Sisters Jia Yao and He Zigang came to see them off together. It can be seen that sisters Jia Yao have a bit of reluctance in their eyes, but it is not that they are reluctant to part with Sonia, they are reluctant to leave David. These two sisters already have David in their hearts. Shadow. Brother He, I'll leave the matter of Yanchang to you. You should pay more attention to the medicinal materials. As long as there are rare medicinal materials, no matter what the cost, we will take them down. If you are not sure, you can call me. David patted He Zigang on the shoulder and said, Brother David, don't worry, all the medicinal herbs in Yanchang that are over 100 years old now pass the hands of my Renhedang, and no one dares to argue with me. He Zigang said confidently. David's arrival in the past few days has made He Zhigong's Renhedang famous. After all, only Renhedang is the agent of Xiao Wandan, and Tongrentang dare not earn any more. Other medicine shops dare not follow Renhedang against it. After a few more chats, David and the others rushed back to Horrendal. Back in Horrendal, Sonia went home directly. She didn't see Reuben these days, and Sonia was also a little worried. David went back to the Pine Mountain Villa by himself. Mom, I'm back, is the meal ready? After entering the door, David changed his shoes and shouted instinctively. Chapter 331. Take her away.